Love the British monarchy? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the To Die For Daily podcast with Kinsey Schofield. Take it away, Kinsey.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me. Kinsey Schofield here with the To Die For Daily podcast. And I've got, this is a hard introduction, Chris Levine, because I want to say you just are a genius. How do you describe what you do and how do you describe yourself? Because you're not just a photographer.
Oh, I'm touched, but no, it's all about, for me, it's about light. I work with light, and often, I get called a photographer because some of my most well-known work, they're photographs, and they're in a National Portrait Gallery, but actually, my work is about light. And in the case of portraiture, it's about capturing the subject's inner light. But what I'm often trying to do with the work as an artist working with light is to try and take people towards stillness.
Yeah.
And I think at a point of stillness, it's a portal to the divine, and it's a meditative thing. I think a lot of my best ideas and direction increasingly is informed through getting still and out of meditation. And with my work, I'm trying to give people, even just for brief moments, take them into a meditative state where something profound happens. You recalibrate, and the world's crazy out there.
Yeah.
And it's getting crazier by the day. And if I can lead people to a point with my art and just give them moments of refuge where you're not thinking about it, it's a much more kind of heart conscious kind of awareness, that you're not caught up in the noise in the mind. Sometimes we can wake up in the morning and, our minds have been busy all night in dreams, and you can wake up feeling completely unrested, and we're not taught how to get still. And, for me, it was a big turning point in my life. And, when I shot the Queen, it was around the time where I was just getting into meditation, and I was feeling really evangelical about it. The world meditated, there'd be no more wars. We'd be more compassionate. People would love each other. We'd look after each other, and it's so whenever I go away, and I regularly go on these 10-day retreats of vows of silence, and I come in really when I come back, I really just, why isn't the world meditating? Why aren't we teaching the kids to meditate? Why aren't we all meditating? And what a different planet it would be. But yeah.
I'm
getting evangelical again.
I love it. I think, what I really appreciate about you, because I did a lot of research on you. First of all, I just want to say we're talking today because you're in this brilliant new documentary called Portrait of the Queen. And for me personally, it was a highlight to see you and hear you talk about working with Her Majesty. But you're just really kind and gracious in explaining your art. And that's not necessarily the case with brilliant artists. They're usually like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. But you are so overwhelmingly kind and giving when it comes to explaining what your objectives are. So I feel so privileged to speak to you. And I understand you thought it was a joke. A very specific friend, you had the guy in mind or the woman in mind when you got the call that the Queen would like to have her photo taken by you. Can you explain that a little bit to me?
Yeah, because I got the call completely out of the blue, and I thought it was a friend of mine pulling my leg, because I'd shot rock stars and Indian Guru even, but a portrait of the Queen as a hologram that just seemed too far-fetched. So I went along with it, thinking, oh, I know, my friend Steve. Yeah, I know. And but it was no. But then I was summoned to a meeting at the National Portrait Gallery, and then I knew. Even then, I was a bit suspect. But and actually, I got there and I realized, okay, this is for real. But then I thought, well, this whole point of the portrait was to mark 800 years of history, 800 years since Jersey, the island of Jersey, and the Channel Islands broke away from France and pledged allegiance to the crown, and they wanted to mark that with a modern portrait and of the Queen. And I just, I thought I'm not worthy. I thought maybe portraiture would be something I'd do later on in my career, but I honestly went to that first meeting at the National Portrait Gallery thinking they were going to shoot me down. How audacious! What right did I have to shoot a portrait of the Queen, a historic portrait of the Queen, to mark 800 years of history? Where's my big body of portraiture? And because I'd only done one or two projects. I've been experimenting with it, thinking, it's an aspect of what I do, but it's something, as I say, I thought I might do later. But then when I got to the meeting with the director of the National Portrait Gallery and one of the top guys from Jersey, was that no, on the contrary, they really supported the choice for me. I was one of a short list of artists, and I was the wild card because, there were these household name artists, and then there was me who might take it into the future. And the whole point was to create a modern image that would celebrate the modern relationship of the crown. So, it didn't need to be an oil painting or something more traditional. It was all about, and the medium would be part of communicating that modernity. And I actually got a huge amount of support from the National Portrait Gallery, and they were, right behind the commission. So it was, I could relax then, and then it was in the diary for 3 years before I actually did it. But I had plenty of time to think about it. No, it was a great honor.
I cannot imagine 3 years to prepare for that moment. Does that increase the anxiety level when you walk in the room?
Well, I was quite blasé. I mean, 3 years is fine. Plenty. It's in the future. I don't have to worry about it now. I mean, I was really nervous about the meeting at the National Portrait Gallery, and I really thought I might leave the meeting and it's all over, because I'm not. They've got, like, say, these really household name artists that everyone knows, have done lots of portraiture, and what I was, because I went in there. I mean, I wanted to do it, but I thought, they're going to give it to a more traditional artist. And, one of the points of the commission was to celebrate the modernity. And I felt, if I'm going to do this, I want to create something that's an evolution of portraiture. I mean, she's the most portrayed woman in history. And, so I wanted to do something which would take it, to the next stage. We're in a different era, and I wanted to do something that would be an evolution in portraiture. And so, working in 3D was part of that. But I just wanted to connect with the subject in a way that hadn't been done before. And I remember, years later when I did it in the National Portrait Gallery, their official statement was the most evocative image of a royal by any artist.
Wow.
And that was a moment. Yeah.
Right? Well, yeah, that's what I thought, because just looking at the images, the palace even today has such a controlled brand, and it doesn't really fit the narrative. So it is kind of exciting that they would take a chance on someone like you, because it's not, like you said, it's not what you expected to see. Do you think that is, and I know you've said before that we use the word iconic almost like grossly too much, but do you believe that's why your art is so iconic? Because somebody did take a chance, and somebody said, hey, we're going to go in this completely different direction, and it's going to rock everyone's worlds when they see it.
Well, I think credit there goes to Gordon Young, who's the curator that Jersey appointed, in that he put me forward because, he felt that the direction I was taking my work at the time with light would really turn everything upside down and would be, a really positive statement, light over darkness. I mean, light is fundamental. And so I was given that opportunity, which was daunting in a way, because I was given a lot of freedom, and I assumed that there'd be rings and rings of bureaucracy and people telling me what needed to be in the image, and there'd be whole committees telling me what I needed to do to make the portrait. But there was none of that. I thought, because it was commissioned by Jersey, it would have to have the 3 Leopards of Jersey, Mont Argyll Castle in the background, and all these props and suggestions, but none of that was left entirely up to me. And what I wanted to do, it's my process in everything I do, really, working with an artist as an artist, is to distill it to essence, and to take and to really purify in any way I can through each stage of the creative process, is to simplify. I don't want anything extra. I just want to get to the essence, get it to really resonate. So a week before the sitting, I got a call from Her Majesty's assistant, Angela Kelly, to ask what would I like her to wear. And up until then, I've been thinking, she's going to turn up on the day and I'm going to work with the Queen. She's the Queen of England. I'm not going to tell her what to wear. She's going to wear what she wants to wear, and I'm going to make her portrait. But no, then I got, wow, I got to start thinking about, well, what would I like her to wear? So I went to meet Angela at Buckingham Palace, was able to go through the wardrobe and look at the various garments, and so I chose and styled what she wore, from the crown that she wore, the diadem, through, I wanted 1 line of pearls, not her usual 3, and in everything I was doing in the process was just trying to simplify it, And I wanted to make something, that would really resonate. And so I didn't want to get any kind of distractions or noise or too much, I just wanted to kind of keep it and create something that would really kind of vibrate, resonate.
Well, it's interesting that you say light in the darkness, because I think that one of the messages I got throughout Portrait of the Queen was that the Queen was really the light in the darkness. So, I think that that's a perfect way to describe the work you created together, the objective that you had, and just the Queen in general, because, she was a constant, and she was, even over here in the States, she was a constant, and she, was a comforting figure. Some of the photographers talked about just looking at images of her, composure and strength. Was that, are those two words that you would use to describe her in working with her and in getting to know her in a short period of time?
Well, I had two sittings with her, and both were quite different. I mean, originally, it was in the diary for 3 years, and it was one sitting, and I had to get it right in that first sitting. There was no second chance. And that was quite a challenge in itself, because we developed a new camera especially for it to shoot the 3D. There's lots could go wrong, and things kind of did go wrong, but we no one knew that but us and my technical team. And we got through the sitting, and I thought I had it in the can. Thought fantastic. Literally, Her Majesty left after an hour and a half, and I literally lay down on the floor, thinking, I've done it. Hallelujah. There's so much good to go. I'm literally lying down there after like 3 years build up, and then we've got it done. I knew I had the material to work in post-production. I knew I could do all kinds of things with it. And I'm still lying on the floor. And then one of her aides walks back into the room, the yellow drawing room. I literally had to get up and, brush myself down. And I said, well, Her Majesty enjoyed that. If you'd like another sitting, you just have to write. So then I had hindsight, basically. Then I could look at what I'd shot in the first sitting and make some fine adjustments. But also, I think on the first sitting, I think partly why she offered me the second sitting is that I don't really think, and that looking back on it, it's a very different mood that she had in the first sitting. When I met her, there was a lot going on in the press at the time with Prince Charles. He was getting in the neck for something. I don't know what was happening, but George Bush was staying at the palace. Security was really tight. There was so much going on. I just don't think this was the day for her to have her portrait done. Yeah. Of course she did, because it was in the diary for so long, and she does what she does very well, and that's her duty, and she did it. But the second sitting, which she offered me, when she turned up, it's so different. She was so relaxed, and Chris, nice to see you, and it was all very easy. Whereas in the first sitting, she was quite dour and quite, she didn't really engage much. She did everything I asked her to do, and she worked with me. But the second sitting was where the magic happened. Wow. And I was able to look at what I'd shot in the first sitting, and I made some final little tweaks and adjustments that really made all the difference. And for instance, I asked on the first sitting, I had the camera looking up at her, so she was like, I was looking up almost and I asked for a selection of capes, because I felt that she'd changed the cape, she can change the look very quickly, and she had a simple A-line dress, and I thought a different cape, different look, like a fashion shoot, you can try this, you can try that, try lighting, all these. None of that, because of the camera and the 3D. I need to be very specific about the distance of the subject, how it was lit, and to get the right 3D. But I could change the look really quickly by just changing the cape, putting a different cape on. And in the first sitting, when she had quite a military cape, and when the camera was looking up at her, and it looks like she looked quite dictatorial. It was not like this of being. It was a very, very different look. It was
not
powerful.
Very meditative.
It wasn't meditative at all. It was a very different thing, and it spoke in all kinds of different ways. But it wasn't where I wanted to take it. But because then I had hindsight. I could look at that and think, oh, okay, so I'm going to change the camera angle. And I realized that in the first sitting, when she put the ermine on, that was it. Forget the military capes or whatever. It was the ermine. This was the one with the fur, and it was just, I felt somehow that I just channeled it, and it was beautiful. And so the second sitting, I just focused on that and just went for the shot. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I just wanted to tweak it, change the lighting slightly, change the camera angle, and she was much more relaxed. And also I was timing the camera movement because the camera moved along a track and shot the 3D images from left to right. And while the camera's moving, sometimes the subject tends to kind of watch. You can't help but watch the camera. So I created an ultraviolet crucifix, and I had that set behind the camera. So she's looking at that. The camera was so while the camera's moving past, you're looking at the cross in the distance without, being distracted by the camera. So the formal portrait, Equanimity, which is in the castle in Jersey, and it was on the cover of Time magazine. When you look at that with her eyes open, she looks like she's looking right through you, right into the distance, and it's really powerful. And it's something I use. It's been something that I do with all my subjects now, is using this cross. But there are also other techniques that I use. For instance, is to get the subject to stillness, to get them really quiet and into that point of stillness where that reveals more like an inner truth, inner light. And for instance, I did Elton John's portrait for his retirement a couple of weeks ago, and I used certain sound frequency. I had him sitting on this speaker, the sound frequency, and it emitted this tone which really does relax you. And 136.1 hertz it is, if anyone's interested. And then you can, and it almost chilled him out a bit too much. But with Her Majesty, I didn't use sound, but I had incense burning, I had a candle, I had this ultraviolet cross, and in the distance in the room, I had this what I call a color modulator, which are these 3 discs which are changing color really slowly. You barely see they're changing unless you look at them for a long time. And so it's just creating an ambience of, calm, and it's and it works, and so all my subjects, including the Dalai Lama, and I use these different techniques to more and more. I'm using sound, but I use these techniques to just calm and center and to get in touch with something deeper than just the visual of what they look like. I'm trying to connect with their spirit, really.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And now a word from our sponsor. I feel like you would be appalled if you saw on my iPhone how much time how you get those alerts that are like, you spent 4 hours this week on social media.
No.
You would take my phone away from me. I'm going to start meditating after this interview because what you're saying. No, I read that your shoots were, and you've described this a little bit, were highly technical, taking hours of preparation to achieve the necessary number of portraits. So is the Queen a patient person, or is this all set up before she arrives? Is the process ongoing as you're shooting?
Yeah, so I mean, for instance, with the Queen, we were in Buckingham Palace for 3 days setting up the equipment. So that was all set up, and I knew exactly what height she was, and so everything's set up, and I had someone to stand in while we could do the lighting. So when Her Majesty arrived, we could get straight down to work. Right. And we knew, exactly how tall she was, because that was really important with the geometry for the 3D. So no, there's a lot of pre-production and planning and installation to do the sitting, but that's always before the subject arrives. The Dalai Lama, I only had him for 15 minutes, but we spent 2 days setting up the cameras and everything so that when he arrived, we could just get straight to it.
Oh, how exciting. I love your life. In 2022, you said seeing the work on stamps and currency is quite surreal, and I'm honored. Did you ever in your wildest dreams, you think outside of the box on a daily basis, and this apparently is one of those things that you never saw coming. Did you manifest this in any way?
I think we manifest everything, and more as I get older, it's all about manifesting, and I think that's the thing with meditation. It gets you to a point where you're dealing with life as it is, not as you want it to be, but reality as it is. Because if we want our life to be or this shape or that, or we want it to work like this, but no, if you start with the things as they really are, then you can, from that point, you can make things happen because you're dealing with the truth, you're dealing with reality. But no, the currency thing was not, but I think, going with the flow of things, I helped it happen. But no, originally the commission was just for one portrait, one light box that was going to be in the castle. Everything else that happened and all the other things that have happened since that I can trace back to, the portrait of the Queen. I mean, I've got to shoot some incredible subjects, and I always thought portraiture was something I'd do later on in my career. But I guess maybe I am later on in my career. I mean, this is but it's been amazing that because all my subjects have come to me. I didn't go out looking for the Queen portrait. I mean, I didn't, with the Dalai Lama was I mean, he doesn't sit for formal portraits, and people would always ask me after the Queen, who would I best like to shoot? You've done the Queen, it's downhill all the way, isn't it? You've done it. But it was always David Bowie and the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of our time, and Bowie was really influential in my work at art school and everything. I felt, I was going to shoot him. Sadly, he passed. But the Dalai Lama. But so what happens? This little story here. What happened and how the Dalai Lama portrait came about. I would always say the Dalai Lama because people would ask me a lot. So it'd be my standard response. Oh yeah, Bowie and the Dalai Lama. And I went to meet a colleague of mine who I was working down at the Eden Project, which is down in Cornwall, right far down the south of England. And I live in London. And so to meet halfway sometimes with the creative director, rather than me go all the way down there or him come to London. So I went to meet him off the train. I hadn't seen him for several months. I met Peter off the train, gave him a hug, and his phone rang. He said, "Oh, I just get that." And it was, "Oh, Peter, it's Tibet House." And Tibet House knew that Peter knew me, and they were looking at this idea of doing the Dalai Lama's 80th birthday portrait. And the curator said, "Oh, I'll call my friend Peter. He knows Chris, and perhaps he can put us in touch." "Oh, Peter, you've got Chris's contact details. Perhaps you could pass them on, and we could get in touch with him." He said, "Yeah, here he is." That was the Dalai Lama. So then you like, bing, something's going on outside of our bandwidth of perception. Reality is, we just see that much of it, but there's a much bigger thing going on, and if you can just be open to it, these kind of things happen. I mean, it's bizarre.
It says so much about your work that these opportunities are just appear out of, I mean, it says so much about your hard work because, we see the way that people market themselves today. People market themselves so much more today. Everyone is a brand today, thanks to social media. And you just worked incredibly hard, and it was word of mouth. And like you said, the universe making magic happen. So I think that speaks volumes for your talent. But can I just say, my favorite is the Diamond Jubilee portrait. And this is, I can't, I'm so sorry, I can't remember who you partnered with, but actual diamond.
Asprey.
Asprey,
the jewelers, yeah.
Yes, put on this beautiful portrait. How did that idea come about?
Yeah, well, I got approached by Asprey, and that was for the Diamond Jubilee. It was to do a diamond rendition of the portrait. And so it used 1,100 diamonds, and it had one of them, which was this huge rock in the middle. And it was to celebrate the Diamond Jubilee in 2012.
And so
absolutely, an interesting piece.
I mean, just visually stunning. And I don't know if this was the intention, but because so much of your work involves light, diamonds so beautifully, when you see them in light, it takes your breath away. So that was one of my favorite pieces. Now, I didn't realize you'd spent some time with the king. He's actually the one that revealed the portrait, and then you had dinner with him. He had a literal run-in with your wife, which was hilarious. He seems to be a very creative individual, and he seems to really, be intrigued by artists. Did he pick your brain about some of the ways that you use light? Did he pick your brain about your art when you got to spend some time with him?
Yeah, well, as you say, he did unveil it. He literally switched it on in Jersey, and he was really into it. He gave me a lot of support. He was really he's got an incredible sense of humor. He's a very funny man, and actually I hope to be doing his portrait. It's almost breaking news. Well, let's see how that plays out. But he did be lovely. He unveiled the portrait of his mother, and now that he's passed with Jersey, it's there to celebrate the relationship between Jersey and the crown. It was just a no-brainer. So I think it's but it's a challenge. So to do a portrait of the king compared to what I did with his mother, it's a very different. I'll take a very different approach, and I have something. I can already see kind of what I'm going to do. Watch this space.
I don't want to spoil that because I know that that will be a sacred special time, but could you tell me just off the top of your head, what would you do for a Prince William portrait?
Well, he did. I did speak to Prince William, and actually, and I saw Kate last week. You know, as you do. No, but I was literally complete surprise. Was introduced to Kate at a festival in Norfolk in England last week. But I met William just when she was pregnant with her first child, and did talk about doing portrait. But I'm not really a family portrait artist, but I would love to do William and Kate.
He will be king one day. Would you?
No, completely.
You did
Yeah.
do you. It's almost like you wanted to purify the Queen, and it does sound like you want a little pizzazz with King Charles. But for a King William, do you think that you'd go all in, or would you purify him too?
I don't know. With Charles, I'm thinking of two different directions and two images which would, tell the story. But with William, I think it's about connecting with the subject, and when that's going to happen, I think, like I think with the Queen, I sometimes feel I just channeled it,
Yeah.
and so I'll, just be guided to do what I'm meant to do, really.
I'm trying to manifest this for you, Chris. I'm trying to manifest for the both of us. I'm ready to be your assistant, your photography assistant.
Okay. Hey.
Well, you were such a joy to speak with. Like I said, I can't stress enough how beautiful your work is, how brilliant you are, and just how sincerely kind you are to give people like me the time of day and to explain, your motivation and your objectives. And again, Portrait of the Queen, I lit up when it was your time, when I got to watch you explain your relationship and that experience with Queen Elizabeth. And I'm so grateful for your time today. So thank you. And that documentary, for everybody wondering, comes out September 5th. They can stream it. Chris is a joy in that documentary. You get to hear even more about his interaction with Queen Elizabeth II. And thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed that. Thanks a lot, Kinsey.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye.